right, awesome. Hello, everyone. There's so many of you here. It's great to have you all with us. Today is going to be a webinar all about the ladies behind Extreme E, and I'm going to introduce you to them all shortly. But this webinar is being brought to you by Girls on Track UK and Motorsport UK. And again, thank you so much for all of you who are joining us. You've already sent some questions in, but if you want to send any questions throughout this webinar, do use the Q&A function that is at the bottom of your screen, and we'll try to get those all answered for you throughout this webinar. But all right, let's get started. So I'll start by introducing each of the ladies, and then I'm going to get them to talk a little bit about what they do. And yeah, if you have any questions, pop them down there. We'll get them answered for you. All right, we will start off with you, Nina. Would you like to just introduce yourself to everyone and tell them what you get up to behind the scenes of Extreme E?
Yeah, hello everyone, and thanks Girls on Track UK for having me today. Super excited to be part of this webinar. I'm Nina Dreier. I'm head of marketing at Extreme E. I've been with Extreme E now for just over 2 years. So I've been there from before we actually started, from very early on, which is super exciting. Before I actually joined Extreme E, I was working for Red Bull in the UK and Red Bull HQ in the sports marketing department. And before that, actually at Formula E very early on when they were in a similar stage as Extreme E. So been in the motorsport world for quite a while. And yeah, super excited to be part of this incredible adventure, Extreme E. And yeah, my day-to-day job. So we're a startup, first of all. So that means we're a very, very small team. So one person does the job of what 10 people probably would do in like a bigger company, which is stressful at times, but also super exciting because it's very broad. So no day is the same. So it's hard to say how my everyday looks like. Every day is different, which makes it that exciting. But obviously with marketing, it's a broad term, and that involves quite a few different areas, such as the main thing I could say, it's a lot of like research, analysis, and building up the audience and really segmenting it. Developing the brand strategy, that was one of the first things we did, and the marketing strategy, obviously, because that feeds into so many different elements like comms, social media, and so on. So we're very closely with comms and social media. Get to work in super exciting projects with great people every day. Then the main thing is also like really building up our fan base. So that's one of the biggest challenges as well for this season. CRM, merchandise, website, working closely with the teams and the drivers as well. So yeah, pretty broad, but super exciting.
Amazing. Thank you so much for telling us a little bit about that. And you mentioned social media, so I'm going to take that and we're going to come over to our next guest, which is Alexa. And you are all Formula E? No, you're going to tell me about that. You're an Extreme E TikTok content creator and presenter. So tell us a little bit about what you do.
Thank you. Yeah, well, firstly, yeah, thank you everyone for having me. I'm so excited to be able to come and talk about this because I love Extreme E. I'm super passionate about the series and very lucky that I get to work on it full time. So yeah, my name's Alexa. I am a TikTok presenter, producer, anything I need to be in order to make it work, I will do. So my day to day is where I actually work at an agency who in turn works with Extreme E. So I work with them on the daily, making content that you see go out on the platform. It varies basically what I do compared to if we're going into a race weekend, in which I will be preparing these longer, big live streams that go out, and they're a really key part of our strategy for the weekend, really. Whereas the rest of the time, it's 2 to 3 videos a day, keeping on top of trends, making sure I'm using all of the old footage. How can I help out in other areas of social media where Extreme E and the team might need a bit of an uplift? So I will do whatever I can to support the team and bring TikTok to life and make sure the fans get a bit of a different insight on our platform that they might get from other social media platforms.
Awesome. Okay, right. We're 2 out of 3 down in introducing the team. Let's come to Sheena. You are an ocean scientist, is that correct?
Yes, that is. So I'm from the Seychelles, which is a small group of islands in the Indian Ocean, for all those who don't know where that is. So a little more tropical than where you guys are at the moment. And essentially, Extreme E also has a scientific community. which means that they have these scientists that come together and discuss what are some of the programs or projects that they can take on when they're in the different race areas. And some of those projects go on for a year, and some of them have longer implications, right? So I'm lucky that I work with them on that side of the project. So I'm very new to motorsports, and essentially in my general day-to-day job, I'm a marine scientist. Particularly, I've worked with genetics and sharks, and at the moment with the deep sea. So I work with scientists at Oxford and Necton, which is a deep sea NGO based in the UK.
Fantastic. Wow, it's so great to hear from each of you, because I feel like you're all from different parts of, you know, the things that make Extreme E possible. So it's so great to have, you know, 3 different perspectives as to how you guys are making this series come to life and making it work. We've had a question come in from the Q&A section, and I feel like this is something we're going to talk about a bit more frequently as well, is do you have any advice for people who are looking to get work experience, not just in Extreme E, but also in motorsport in general, in marketing comms, or over the summer months? So yeah, any advice on apprenticeships? We'll come on and talk about education in a little bit, but yeah, any advice on getting that experience, getting your foot in the door?
Well, maybe if I make a start, just from my own experience, how I got into it is really, one thing is internships. Internships is the key way to get into a company, show passion, network as much as possible. Offer your services. Sometimes at the beginning it needs to be for free, just to show who you are, your willingness to work, have a strong work attitude. I think I prefer someone that has a very strong work attitude, is passionate, and has like a can-do attitude, over someone who had like an amazing degree but no work ethic. Especially in our environment in a startup, it's very stressful at times, so it's also long working hours. It's not like a classic 9-to-5 job, so you need to be willing to work long hours sometimes as well, but it's equally very rewarding because you're a little family. We travel around the world. It's like this little family. We through the whole year grew very strongly together, so it's very rewarding as well. But yeah, to answer the question how to get into it, internship for me was really the key driver. And just try a few, because sometimes that's the way how you learn what you like, what you don't like. That's how it was for me. I did some in finance even, which clearly didn't end up in finance for a reason, but I wouldn't have found out if I wouldn't have tried it.
Fantastic. Anyone else got anything to add?
Yeah, I can jump off the back of that, because I think that internships are definitely a really good way in, but actually just it's getting the experience, even if it's not necessarily through a formal internship. So the way I started to learn my craft was by making really silly little fandom edits when I was a kid. So I'd download TV shows I liked and I'd recut them to music and things like that. At the time, it was just a fun hobby for me because I was a bit of a nerd and I loved my TV shows. But what it taught me was how to use all of the editing software and showed a passion for media, which in turn meant when I then applied for work experience programs, and I'm guessing we'll come on to this in a bit, but I never went to university. I did an apprenticeship instead. And I had no formal experience in television, but I could turn around and show the people who were hiring me, look, this is how I can evidence to you that I'm really passionate about this industry and getting into it. And I've already had a go myself, and I just need somebody to take a chance on me to have a proper career in this.
Amazing. Yes. Sheena, anything from you?
Yeah, I think so not necessarily from the motorsports, but in general, just apply for everything that you're passionate about. The amount of rejection you get is constant, but there's always that one that will say yes and that will take a chance on you. So just apply. If you see something you're interested in, just go for it.
Amazing.
Exactly. Okay. And also to add as well, LinkedIn really offered also a lot of opportunities. If you see, like, if you really like a company, find out who works there, just direct message them on LinkedIn and just be persistent. Sometimes really we've hired internships through that because people have emailed me on LinkedIn. I could really see they're super passionate about it. So that could also be one way of doing it. If you don't have a massive network or the opportunity or the accessibility to network, it could definitely be one way.
Yes, and we've actually just had a question as well, kind of, which I assume you just saw, about advice on networking, because I think it's really difficult. When I first downloaded LinkedIn, I was like, oh, I'm so overwhelmed. What do you do? How do you approach people? So how, Alexa, do you have any kind of super good advice as to how you network well? Because sometimes it can be a fine line between absolutely pestering someone and, you know, being persistent and trying to get them to notice you.
It's funny that people talk a lot about LinkedIn and you say super good advice. I have no super good advice about LinkedIn. I'm terrified of the platform. I don't really know what I'm doing, but the way I use it is just sort of sharing results we've had after a race weekend, seeing what my colleagues are doing, seeing how other people who use TikTok in maybe entertainment industry are using it. I find it's really handy to stay on top of media trends in that sense. But my way of networking was entirely through social media. I think Twitter was the big one for me, but my Twitter page is utterly curated towards my job, basically, that I don't really have much in terms of fun and casual friendship on that. I use my social media with the mindset of using it for work. So I'll chat to friends on there, and it's friendly networking. It's asking people, oh, how did you make that edit? I saw that edit you made was amazing. Just chatting to them, complimenting them on it, getting to know people. And it doesn't have to be as formal as LinkedIn all the time. Now, I've never got an internship off the back of Twitter, but I have made friends who in turn have been able to give me advice about the industry and share their experiences, and you get to learn from them as well. So that's how I network nowadays.
Yeah, and just off the back of that as well, use this chat as well if you want to meet people who are like kind of the same as you, who are looking for similar advice, and definitely look in the Girls on Track Facebook group too, for all of, you know, for other people who are looking to do the same things as you. Other people might have similar questions. It's a great place for you guys to meet each other and to find people with similar mindsets. So yeah, use the chat of this Zoom if you want to, and also use the Girls on Track Facebook page. But yeah, let's talk about education a little bit, because I feel like this is something that gets asked all the time and everyone is really curious, because a lot of our viewers are young and are trying to, you know, pick how they get into this industry and pick courses that are going to complement it in the future. But everyone's got a different way of getting into the industry. So you guys have touched on this a little bit, but let's actually talk about your educational background and how you got into the roles that you did. Who wants to start?
Oh, I don't mind. I'm happy to start.
Awesome.
Okay, so how did I get into this? To say into motorsport, I did grow up in a motorsport family. So my dad was a racing driver, my granddad, and so was my cousin actually. So I was quite like, yeah, I was born into it. But to be fair, it wasn't always clear to me how I would see myself involved from the beginning. To be completely honest, like, as I said, I've done internships in finance and then in marketing. This all came because I wasn't really sure what to do. So I did a bachelor in Munich in business administration. And there I had to decide, do I go down the route into finance or marketing? And it was at that point that I decided to do an internship. The finance one didn't take long to realize I didn't like it. And then I actually did one in marketing and brand management, which was 6 months, but it was in a telco industry. And also I really enjoyed the marketing and brand side of it. I absolutely didn't like telecommunications. So at least I knew, okay, I didn't like that, but let's go into that direction. So I graduated. And then I always had a passion for languages and also traveling and just learning more about different cultures and meeting new people. So I just wanted to go abroad. And I thought, okay, how do I convince my parents? And the best way of doing it is to say I'm doing my master's there. So I went to the UK, did my master's degree in marketing communications, and also kind of wanted to have more working experience. So that's how I got into the internship with Formula E. So there was a bit of networking for sure. And actually had my interview with my current boss, Ali Russell, which was the co-founder at that time of Formula E and the CMO. Finished my degree, and after my internship got luckily offered a job at Formula E. So I started there full time for a couple of years in the marketing department, and also did actually a bit of media planning, which was like working with broadcasters together. But again, really realized, okay, marketing is more what I really like. So I was doing like the promotional campaigns at that time for the races, and also a bit of CRM. And then after that, I got the opportunity to join Red Bull UK in the sports marketing team. And I mean, for every marketer, that's like the pinnacle of marketing. So I did take the chance. I went to Red Bull, and it was an incredible experience, a massive learning curve for myself as well. And I worked across different sport events there, and really, again, realized, okay, I like marketing, like sports, but it's more motorsport. Like I really always like all the motorsports projects that we did. I just felt like, oh, they come more natural to me. And that's probably also because I understood the driver side, the team side, but also the business side. So it all makes sense. And this is kind of like how my role really shaped, and where I kind of found my path, I would say, which, as I said earlier, at the beginning, I really wasn't sure where this all is going to take me when I started studying, even when I finished my bachelor degree. It all just came from one decision to the other, from mistakes I did, from learnings. And then I always stayed in touch with the team at Formula E, and I was closely following what Alejandro and the team were doing with Extreme E. And through conversations, and we caught up at an event. I think it was even a Formula E event at some stage, and I asked how things are going, and that opportunity came up, and I took it. And I mean, at that point, everything was pretty uncertain, but I believed in the team. Alejandro's pulled off a massive project with Formula E, and was pretty convinced he's going to do it again. And here we are, 4 races in, finishing off the last race of the season in Dorset on the 18th and 19th of December. So, and this all happened during COVID as well. So it's been a fantastic year. Super proud of the team and to be part of this. And also to be part of this whole adventure and bring more females into motorsport. That was something I really tried as well when I was at Red Bull in the UK. Actually, at that point, it was the project that Susie launched was Dare to Be Different. At that time, there was no Girls on Track in the UK, I believe. And it's just so funny to see that now I'm here in that webinar with Girls on Track UK, and being part of this development. So it's pretty exciting for me as well.
That is so great. Thank you for taking us through your journey. And thank you for reminding us that the whole of Extreme E has been done in COVID times, which we'll come on to as well, because you guys have had to deal with a lot of unpredictability, shall we say, this season. And we'll talk about it a little bit later. Sheena, do you want to talk us through your educational history, kind of how you got today? Because yours is a very, very scientific role.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm just listening to Nina and how, it's completely different, right? So to be completely honest, guys, I love swimming and hiking, but I've never really been into motorsports. Now, can you imagine? I'm like an islander, right? I'm from an island. So like motorsports have never been a big deal here, just because there's no capabilities necessarily doing it. So I went to university on scholarships and did an undergraduate and studied sharks and, all that cool fish stuff. And then did an honors degree and then finished off with a master's degree in this fly fishing species. Came back to the Seychelles because I had to leave the Seychelles to be able to go to university. This is how small this place is. And worked with government, and then joined Necton as a science program manager. And essentially it's through their affiliations with Extreme E and the lead scientist, Lucy Woodall, who you will see at the Jurassic series, which is exciting. It's through her and that connection that actually got me in with Extreme E. But I think what we should take away from this is, firstly, even Nina, when she was talking, she always grabbed onto opportunities. So, when you see those doors opening, kind of walk through them. Don't be afraid to walk through them. And it is sometimes really scary to just, wander into the unknown, especially when you're not entirely sure what you want to do. And also I think that motorsport and sports in general are becoming more aware of their environmental footprints and, awareness raising, and how important it is to capture the audience and teach them something while also enjoying sport. So understanding that there's intersectionality happening a lot. Look at TikTok and how it's taken up, and how, you know, people are dancing on TikTok and how people love watching it. So it shows that there's change and there's dynamics. So always keep on your toes and, you know, be willing to kind of change and venture into something new. So I could have been, you know, very easily and been like, well, I don't know anything about motorsports. Why would I go to a race? But it's about taking those opportunities and seeing them as a way to not just advance the changes you want to see in the world, but really be able to aspire other people as you do it.
Yes, perfectly said. I like that a lot. And do you know what's so great as well? Is hearing about how non-motorsport fans have managed to get into the sport, because we don't hear too much about it. It's a lot about kind of the fans who love their sport and want to get into it. So it's so fantastic that you've managed to find a love for motorsport now, which I really like that. All right, let's come to Alexa finally, and you tell us about your lovely educational history and how you got to where you are today, because it's an interesting story. I know this one.
Yeah, it's a bit weird. Everybody will tell you who works in the media that they have an unconventional route in, and I think that is probably because none of us have. There is no conventional route into doing a media related job that we all find our own way in. So my background was with the editing I sort of mentioned earlier, and then I eventually found it was called a youth film scheme, which was called Get Into Film, which was a young reporter program. So you could be a young person. Sorry, I'm lagging a little bit. I'm making sure it's still there.
We're all good. Don't worry. We can hear you. Or I can.
Can you still hear me?
Yep. All good.
Hang on, let me jump on my phone. I'll be back in a minute.
Okay, no worries. We will come back to Alexa in a short moment. But let's go to another question. Let's talk about what are you most excited for kind of in the next few years in terms of the sustainability aspect of Extreme E. Oh, I'm going to keep getting the two of them mixed up. But no, Extreme E is absolutely fantastic. So if any of you guys who are listening, who are watching, don't know, Extreme E is all about racing in areas that are hugely affected by climate change and trying to leave a lasting positive impact. So obviously sustainability is a super, super important aspect. Sheena, you'll obviously be doing a lot of work on kind of the sustainability things to programs, that's the word I'm looking for, thank you. The programs that are being implemented by Extreme E in these locations. And Nina, I'm sure obviously this is a huge marketing thing for you. You're going to be talking about this all the time in terms of the sustainability. So how have you guys found that, and what do you kind of expect to come through in the next couple of years?
Do you want me to start, Sheena? Do you want to start? Probably we're going to come from different angles, probably. No,
yeah,
so so very rightly said, Steph. Actually, how Extreme E actually was born, it was built out of the concert for the climate crisis, and really the goal of the series is to use motorsport, or like the power of sport, as a platform to raise awareness of those environmental issues or the climate change issues that we have, and those race locations we race in, and really to like take positive action to protect the future of our planet. And Extreme E at the moment has a huge impact in terms of like research, technology, and the projects that we support in those locations, which are our legacy projects. And for each of those locations, we really try to leave a positive impact behind. And we do this by working with local NGOs. And really try to look for projects that not only support the environmental benefits, but also the economic and social benefit. For instance, and that's one that Sheena can also tell probably a bit more about, and she was part of it, was in Senegal. We worked with an NGO called Oceanium. And we replanted mangroves where there had been a huge deforestation. And it was so amazing to see like drivers, partners, the Extreme E staff, we all contributed to planting over 1 million mangroves there. And I remember Sheena and me, like we were like in these boats driving for over an hour in the middle of nowhere in the water. And we're like, where are we gonna go? But it was incredible, such a great experience. Yeah, and it will, for me now looking in the next few years, And also already in the next year, will just be good to see the impact that we've had coming back to those locations like Senegal in season 2. So for us, season 1, the goal was really to start raising awareness of those climate issues, of our legacy projects. And now we need to focus on action, like it's inclusive climate action, as we would say, and we need really everyone to play their part and to take this to the next level, like the partners, the teams, the local, international organizations. So we all really need to work together. And actually one thing we've launched at the beginning of the season is called Count Us In, which is our fan-focused platform. And we encourage like people to take action. So you can just type in Count Us In Extreme E. We work with that team to really break through the mainstream audience, I would say. Fans can do this by super easily signing up on the website and support the favorite Extreme E team to take a step. This can be, for instance, eating less meat, walking to work, buy an electric car, you name it. So really like encourage the day-to-day fan to take action. And we are also rewarding basically the Extreme E teams that engage the most with our fan base by rewarding them with a sustainability award at the end of the season. So the ones that win the challenge or get the most people to support them by taking action will be awarded. So yeah, it's going to be exciting to see how we can encourage our growing fan base to take action in the next couple of years. And this is really how we'll be measuring success.
Awesome. Just to come to you as well, Sheena, to talk about the sustainability aspect, but also to talk a little bit about the scientific side. We've had a question that just wants to know how much is the scientific side used in Extreme E and kind of what you do. So could you combine that with the sustainability?
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome.
So I think one of the things that like we should highlight is the fact that motorsports has a different type of platform, right? And often when you think of scientists, you might think of them as old men in a lab or something like that, right? But it's a really great way to showcase the diversity of different scientists around the world, firstly, because they interview a lot of different scientists, even the ones on site, and they talk about the work that they're doing to combat climate change, right? Because there is an amazing amount of research and work that is going into this, into mitigating the effects of climate change around the world. And the other thing that I really like about the thought process that has gone behind it is showing the connection. I think sometimes we forget that the world is huge and that we're all connected, especially through our ocean. And what's been really great is understanding that, what happens in Greenland has an effect on Senegal, and what happens in Australia might have an effect on the UK, so that I think has been a really great highlight. And the other thing is that the program manager, Louisa, who is part of Extreme E, she was great at really kind of choosing these projects on the ground. And she would go in and really spend time with the NGOs that they were working with to understand the work that they were doing and to ensure that the money they were putting in and the time would be used effectively, right? So that there's, this established NGO and an established program. Like Nina was saying, we spent a lot of time in the mangroves. It was fabulous. I mean, I love mangroves. We even got stuck at some point because we were going out on these little boats, and the tide was really low and people had to get out the boat and push the boat. All these drivers, can you imagine?
No, that's crazy.
And all of them having to push the boat. So it was lots of fun. So it is also lots of fun, as you can see. Anyway, from the scientific perspective, as I don't know if you guys know this, but they also have a boat, and the boat transports all the cars around. And on the boat, there's also a really nice lab. So they do a shout for scientists because it's really difficult to get ship time. So they say, hey guys, we have availability on our boat and you guys can join, and there's a proposal they have to do, and scientists can come on board and do lab work between different stations and collect samples on parts of the ocean that you might never have access to. So what's really great, like I said, is that intersection. It's bringing sports and science together and making them gel, which is something that a lot of people might not even think could ever happen.
Yeah, it's not two sides you'd think that would mesh very well, but they've done so perfectly, and Extreme has made it work, which is so crazy, but also very on brand for Extreme as well, doing the what is known as the impossible and making it possible. So we have Alexa back with us finally. She is here and it looks like she's not lagging. So we're going to come back to the educational question and kind of figure out how Alexa got to where she is today. So do you want to take it away?
Yeah, I'm so sorry about that. My Wi-Fi
Don't
just
worry.
decided, you know what, the first time we're just gonna say no. Sorry.
Yes.
So we'll try again. So yeah, I did like a young reporter program, which made me realize that I loved interviewing people. You got the chance to go and interview celebrities on red carpets and things. You do the press junkets, and it showed me my first real insight into the world of media, and I was utterly hooked. I was like, oh my God, so cool, this is amazing. And I loved talking to people, and I loved being able to get stories out of them, and I found a real passion there. And so when it came to, I did my A-levels, sorry, people always ask me this, I did my A-levels in maths, history, economics, and an AS in further maths. Always thought I was going to go and do some sort of like history degree or economics degree at university. I thought I was going to really strict path and go do journalism, maybe sort of more written journalism, maybe even political. And then I somehow ended up on a journalism insight day at Sky News, and they started talking about the apprenticeships. I was like, oh, these things sound kind of cool. So for anyone who's maybe not familiar with the concept, an apprenticeship is where you get a qualification from a standard, maybe a school or a governing body of some form, but in the meantime, you will be working a job. So it might take you 2 years to get your qualification, but for only 1 day a week will you be learning, and the rest of the time you'll be working and earning. And to me, this seemed like an amazing way to get my foot in the door, but in the media, they're super competitive, so I wasn't massively optimistic. So I think I applied to 20, maybe 25, rejected from all but one, but we got one. That's all I needed.
You only need that one, don't you?
Exactly. And I was really unsure about it because I think, especially in the UK, it's quite a traditional thing to go to university and get that education. But for me, my apprenticeship I was offered was only a year long. So I thought, well, if I hate it, I can go back. Turns out didn't hate it, really liked it. So I did an apprenticeship in TV production. I worked in sport. So I worked on the Premier League, EuroLeague basketball, UEFA, the Champions League, doing all sorts of different work. And that was one of the things I loved about it, especially in a lot of apprenticeships, you'll get to try loads of different areas. So I did jobs like media management, where you look after all the media coming into the building. So formatting camera cards and things like that, all the way to being an assistant producer. I got to do a little bit presenting. I really pushed to do that because I knew it was something I was interested in. So I tried to make sure that was in there. And then by the end of it, COVID hit halfway through, so cut it a bit short, but I got my qualification. And once COVID lifted, I joined EuroLeague basketball for a season as a production assistant, which is you make the TV, you write scripts, you also do some of the bookings, hotel bookings. And that was a really interesting job because I loved getting to do the editorial and logistics side, before eventually Formula E came out with a open talent call, which was for young people who wanted to be presenters and were really interested in that side of things. And I'd grown up loving motorsport, but I had no contacts. I didn't know of a way in. So this suddenly seemed like an amazing opportunity. So I put a TikTok together where I pretended to interview some drivers. I stole videos from YouTube of drivers answering questions, and I made up questions to ask them for the fake answers. They seemed to like it. So I got to go to Valencia with that. I didn't end up winning. The lovely Darren, who now works on Formula E, did. And I've met some great contacts through that, including all of the team at Little Dot, which is the agency I now work for. So when Extreme E came knocking and said, to Little Dot, look, we need somebody who can run the TikTok. We don't really know what we're doing. We need somebody who's more familiar with it. The guys reached out to me and were like, look, we know you made a TikTok for Formula E. How would you feel about doing it for Extreme E? And I was like, yes, I'm there. I want to do this. And that's pretty much it. That was sort of history for me, really.
And that's the story of how you got here. Okay, we have a question I think will be suited for both Alexa and Nina, from a sports marketing student. And what is the most challenging thing when you're trying to create marketing strategies or content in the motorsport industry? And do you have any advice for any young, new marketers?
I don't mind, Alexa, you, me, I'm probably going to come from different angles again.
Yeah, 2 angles is great.
Awesome. Okay, I'll give it a go. So no, from a strategic point of view, probably just depends as well. Like when you start, what's the purpose? What's the goal? What do you want to achieve? And then really going down to like a lot of research, segmenting your audience, and then finding out, okay, what's the consumer behavior? How do I reach that audience to achieve my goal? So what channels do they consume? Because different platforms have a different purpose along the customer journey. So it's really like a lot of research and understanding your audience to get to that goal from a strategic point of view. And that then feeds down to the content side, which probably Alexa also can tell you a bit more about it.
Yeah, from the content side, the challenges come from battling, well, we call it the algorithm basically, which is the social media will decide what it shows you most prominently. So we know, for example, that we want to show, I don't know, a certain piece of environmental content, but if we do that wrong and we don't do it in a way that people are going to engage with, it's not going to do very well. So we have all these different messages that we want to portray, and for us it's really important that we do it in a way that's accessible to everybody. So that's the biggest challenge for me, is making sure that we can get the messages that are important to the championship actually on people's pages so that they can see it and learn and understand more and be more involved with the championship.
Awesome. I hope that's answered the question that you that our lovely sports marketing student had. So yes, we'll move on to the next one. They're all flooding in now. We've got so many questions from some of the guys who are enjoying this webinar. Make sure you get them in the Q&A function if you want to ask one of your own questions. But we have one that's, what has been the biggest barrier or obstacle you've had in the motorsport world so far? For all of you. No one wants to go. Okay.
Thinking, yeah, because to be completely honest, like I wouldn't say that in motorsport there was a massive barrier, a bigger barrier than I had not in motorsports. I could see potentially, as someone said earlier, if you don't have a network, it might be more tricky, or even knowing about the opportunities out there, that could be an obstacle. In my way through the path I took, these opportunities somehow came along my path, I would say. But at the beginning, again, I didn't know the opportunities out there. I didn't know where I could see myself in that world. I knew, okay, I like marketing. I grew up in motorsport, and then it's just finding your own path and like bringing everything together, really. So maybe that's a little obstacle, that you have to go and like do your own experiences and have like do mistakes along the way. But there was not really a barrier that I could now think of that really like closed the door for me, that I was like, okay, I'm not able to do this because of that and that reason, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Sheena, are you ready to share?
Yeah, well, like I said, I'm very new to motorsports, but I can just give you my life advice. Like, I'm a very wise person.
We like life advice. That's good.
I think in most things there are always some kind of barrier. You know, sometimes you're a barrier to yourself. Sometimes your background makes you a barrier, or, you know, a perceived barrier. But I think what's important is to really have the confidence to know why you're in a space that you occupy, and to occupy that space wherever it is. So I'll tell you 100%, when I was going out to Senegal to meet the Extreme E team, I was scared out of my shoes because I've never interacted with the motorsport industry. You know, it's like, it's a whole different world. So I'm a scientist, like, how are they going to perceive me? You know, so it is always difficult when you're in a new space. But what you have to do is remember that you've been picked to be in that space for a reason. And often it's because you've worked hard for it. So occupy that space no matter where it is. And that's my 2 cents.
That is fantastic advice, and definitely doesn't just apply to motorsport. I think imposter syndrome is definitely a thing that especially us as women face within this industry, because it's very male dominated. But yeah, we just got to remember that there is a reason why we're here, and I think that's great advice to give everyone. yeah, just take a look in the mirror and remember that you're awesome, and that's why you're in this you're in this world. So Alexa, let's come to you finally. Your biggest barrier / obstacle.
I needed to hear that advice from Sheena today, because I remember it's just, but I also remember my first race was Senegal as well. I didn't do Saudi, I joined in Senegal, and it was my first time spending an extended period of time in a motorsport paddock, and I was completely overwhelmed. It's just so different to anything I've worked on before, but it's a really amazing experience. What's funny is people often ask if gender's a barrier to getting into motorsport, and I think it is definitely a male-dominated industry, and you notice it when you're on site, but I've never had an issue with it in motorsport so far, that people have been really respectful, and I find that people are actively working to make a difference now. In previous sports, I've had some problems with it, and I remember there was one time during COVID that I went to the bathroom on our office floor, and they had automatic lights that turned on in the morning. The first person went in there and turned them on. Nobody had been in there, and it was 2 p.m. in the afternoon. There wasn't a single other woman on my floor who'd been in there to turn them on. And that really stuck with me as a moment where I realized that there just weren't that many women, and you have to work with it and you get used to it. And I hope that I won't have to be used to it in the future, because with things like this, we'll have more and more women coming into sport and to motorsport. But yeah, I think just believing in yourself, and like Sheena said, having faith in your own ability and knowing why you're there and what you're good at is something that has taken a long time for me to do. And I still struggle with it sometimes. I think we all do, but we're getting there.
Yes, definitely. And we can 100% all relate. I think that is the great thing about this community as well, this Girls on Track community, because we're all in the same boat in that we feel like outsiders and we feel like we're not supposed to be here, but we are. There you go. There's my 2 cents on the advice as well. Wow, even I'm chipping in. Okay, we'll move on to another question. We have one that is about this upcoming weekend of Extreme E, and this is going to be the final weekend of the season. It's going to be next weekend, the 18th and 19th of December, and this is called the Jurassic X Prix. So just before we get onto this question, actually, I want to ask you guys, how well have you had to deal with the fact that Extreme E's calendar was changing throughout this entire year, because it was like we couldn't go to South America, so you've had to now adapt? How difficult was that in each of your roles to adapt to the new races, which you weren't actually expecting to happen, new races in new locations? Okay, none of you want to start. Let's go with Sheena to begin with, because obviously you do a lot of work on the scientific side and all of the initiatives. So how did that change for you with the change in location?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that must have been really challenging, especially from the science perspective, I know that, the programs manager, Louisa, who was working really hard to identify all these NGOs, and us scientists being there, being like, okay, but how are we going to do this? And da-da-da. And, it was really heartbreaking when South America had to be postponed or canceled. And but what was amazing is how they got up and just had backup plans and essentially did amazing things in other locations, because there are just so many locations that are being affected by climate change. So the great thing is that they had so many backups. And yeah, I hope that they can go back to these other areas where they were planning to go previously.
Yeah, and what about, sorry, just to stick with you here, we've got a question that's about the specific initiatives and projects that are going to be taking place in Dorset. Is there anything you can share with everyone prior to actually, us watching the race?
Well, that's a really good question. I'm not entirely sure, so I'll hand that over to Nina. One of the other things that is really good to know in life is to admit when you don't know something.
Definitely.
Another piece of wisdom.
So actually, speaking about COVID and speaking about also changes, I'll go back to this in a second. With the project in Dorset, obviously being a backup race, we did have some challenges as well. Climate change exists everywhere, as Sheena just rightly said as well, and so in Dorset. But actually, the project we're planning on working on together with a local NGO is unfortunately not longer happening. We're announcing our new project very, very soon. It's actually like, I think this week. So I can't say it just now, but watch out for it. It's a very exciting and interesting project. And I'm really looking forward to bring it closer to everyone out there, to the fans, also to the drivers, and experience it myself on site next week. Amazing. But that's all the nature of COVID, as you rightly said. And honestly, I still can't believe it. When I joined Extreme E, I mean, a couple months later, I was in the office for maybe 4 months. It was November, and then suddenly COVID hit, and we were all set at home suddenly. No one knew what's going on in the world or what's going to happen next. Everything was so uncertain at the time that for us, it was the most critical time of the championship, of planning. We didn't have time to stop. It was now that we really had to keep things going, and everyone needs to stay positive and motivated. And honestly, the team was incredible, how everything worked closely together. I mean, it was at a time we were trying to figure out how Zoom works properly. I mean, at that time, I remember like all the calls we had was usually not with Zoom, it was without a video on. So it has had disadvantages as well. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing this webinar here probably, but that's been a massive challenge. It would have been a challenge regardless, because as Sheena said, we were going to these crazy remote locations, which we have with Saudi. It was in the desert, in the middle of nowhere. And for the ops team, it's probably the biggest challenge, and it would have been without COVID, but COVID has just put this to a completely other level. When we then went to Saudi, we need to consider that we went into a country that the borders were shut, but we still managed to get into it. So the ops team has done a fantastic job. Also the broadcast team, to broadcast this race from the desert in the middle of nowhere, finding accommodation for everyone. Obviously we have the ship as well. It was incredible. So it had a lot of challenges, and also Saudi was obviously the first race, but that week there were so many changes because we couldn't test the cars as we planned. We couldn't go to those locations before because of COVID, as you would usually with a recce. So a lot of changes have been made to the race format, which was one thing that affected also my side. So on site, a lot of rebranding of fan initiatives had to change, website copy had to change. So this just shows like how this affected also my role. Like the week leading up to the race, I think no one of the team slept more than 3 hours. It was crazy. But when you then saw the lights go out and we went green in Saudi, it was so emotional. It's just, yeah, it still gives me goosebumps when we saw the cars running and we were live. So yeah, we managed, and obviously we had some changes to the calendar, but we think it was at that point the right thing to do. Obviously it takes for the ship a bit to get to those locations. So we are looking to do this for next season. They're back on the calendar, obviously monitoring the current situation with COVID. Nevertheless, Sardinia was an amazing race. The feedback was incredible. And also to see those wildfires is actually really, really shocking. It's so close to all of us. And seeing that is, really impressive and not in a great way. But also now to go to Dorset and highlighting those climate issues will be really good as well. So it's good to have some European races for sure, but we will still be doing the Amazon and hopefully Patagonia. These were my favorites on the calendar.
Yeah, and we've got people as well saying that they're so hoping that Extreme E will come to Argentina, because obviously it was so disappointing with it getting cancelled. I was super excited for both of those races, and then they got cancelled, but they were substituted in by these incredible ones. And like you guys have been saying throughout this whole thing, it's absolutely fantastic what the whole team has been able to accomplish in such a short period of time with so many obstacles against you. It's just been absolutely amazing to see. So we'll come on to another question. What are your thoughts on the Drive to Survive effect? So obviously still related to motorsport, but how can you capitalize on, new fans entering into the sport as marketers or content creators? And is it having a positive effect on what you guys are doing? Probably Alexa and Nina, directed at you.
I think from my perspective, I've definitely found there's more of an appetite for driver personality-led content. People want to know more about the drivers than I think they did before. They're interested in the personality that you sometimes don't get to see in a traditional broadcast. So from my side, I really work hard to learn a bit about the drivers and then decide, okay, what elements of this personality can I bring across in a 10-20 second video, and how can we do that, and how can we make sure we're true to who this person is, so that people who have that appetite for content, because I mean, in Extreme, we don't currently have anything in the same sort of vein, so it's really important to me to be able to bring these personalities across. And even more generally, I think there are a lot more young fans taking an interest in motorsport now, which just makes me so happy, because I look at our comment section and there are so many people just asking questions about the sport, trying to learn more. Even on our more sustainability-led content, people who come from, you go on their pages and they're F1 fans, but you see them asking questions about the sustainability side, the equality side, everything we care about in Extreme E. And I think there's only going to continue to be that growing interest. And so I really love the effect it's had.
Yeah, same from my side. I mean, from a marketing point of view, I think it's the best thing that could have happened to F1. When they were at a stage where it was going pretty downhill, I think Drive to Survive has put it in a completely different level now. The people following it are following it because they weren't racing fans. It really like broke through to the mainstream audience, and people just like to follow people they can basically relate to or like know the person. It's not just about the person that drives the car. It's like, what's the personality? How can I relate to the person if it's not me driving the car? So that's how it breaks through to other people and building up these characters now as well. And then obviously F1 is so lucky as well to have this rivalry now between Max and Lewis and really building on it, and then backing up with the whole Drive to Survive. It's incredible. It's helped them massively. Like if you look also at the following of all of these drivers through Drive to Survive, they're all really like their following like increased massively over the last few years. So it was the best thing they could have done. And it's also probably helped us just a bit of like the awareness of racing in general, help Formula E, Extreme E. I think that's definitely something we want to look into, just building up these driver profiles, more and hearing drivers in the championship.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. Could we potentially be seeing a Drive to Survive Extreme E version? Does anyone know this?
We're definitely working on a documentary, which will be released after the season. So watch out for it.
Right, well, I look forward to that. Thank you for that information. Okay, we've touched on this a little bit, but how challenging exactly was it in COVID time to set up the marketing strategies as well as kind of the legacy projects when everything was very up in the air? Nina, you talked a little bit about how difficult it was in Saudi because the borders were closed. How difficult was it moving around all of the barriers that COVID presented to make sure that, you know, you could do everything that you wanted to do with Extreme E as a whole? Sheena, this might be good for you as well. Oh, but Nina, you want to go, so you go.
Okay. Well, as I already said earlier with COVID, it was a massive challenge, and all I can say is we just had to adapt with the brand and marketing strategy. Nothing changed from like our vision and the purpose we had as a championship. So that remained the same. It's just like the tactics of how we did it and how we approach things. It just had to slightly change in that way for the ops team. So I think the biggest challenge was really for the ops team. And then also from a comms point of view, how do we communicate it? Nothing has really changed in the marketing strategy itself. But the ops team, as I said, has done an amazing job to deliver those events in a safe way, make it work for everyone. Just deliver the event really. From our side, it was then just we had to change all the assets, all the plans that we had laid out for the year, activations we wanted to do in those markets. Then obviously for the legacy projects, we had to find backup ones, build up these relationships with the NGOs, and everything is pretty fast moving. So this all had to change. Everything then on the website, all the comms, all of the copywriting, that there was a lot of work that had to be changed. Given we're a very small team, obviously was quite a lot of work, but equally, I think a big shout out was to our ops team to make this all work and logistically.
Sheena, anything to add?
Yeah, I think Nina hit the nail on the head, but you know, I think the theme throughout is make a plan, make a plan, make a plan. So how do you adjust and you know, make the best out of whatever's happening? And I think all of us have had to live through that, especially through, speaking through screens. And now it's how we communicate. So I think that was the biggest thing is, making a plan. And sometimes people were disappointed, for example, with some of the scientists that were meant to come on board in certain countries, they couldn't. So, those are disappointing experiences for certain people. But most people were really understanding, because sometimes things are just outside of your control, and you just have to use that experience as a learning curve. Yeah,
definitely. Oh, there's so much good advice being thrown around this webinar all the time. Okay, couple more final questions. What has been your favorite legacy project that you guys have worked on this year? Because not all of it. We've not done the Jurassic X3 one yet, so that one's still to be determined. But we've had 4 races thus far in 4 completely different locations. Which one did you enjoy the most?
I'll jump in. I adored going to the Russell Glacier, and we took some samples of the ice there to investigate why there was some black specks within the ice. And from a content point of view, firstly, going and being able to film that, it's so visual that you see the ice melting in front of you, and it was really great to document it. Everybody was so enthusiastic about being able to help and taking these samples that for me, it was just a really rewarding experience. And from a non-content perspective, it was so amazing to see it. Just from a personal point of view, I've never got to see anything like that in my life, and to not finally, but to be able to see the impact of what we were talking about day in, day out, and have it visually there in front of you, and you realize how bad the situation actually is, was just such an incredible experience. It made me even more passionate about the work I do.
So I'm happy to go next.
Go.
And I loved Senegal. It was really, really a really interesting and complex place. So, and it was really great to connect with other scientists on the ground when we were there. So the legacy project, one that I thought was really interesting is this one guy who is Senegalese and essentially identified that there were problems within his own community and decided, we have to do something about this. And it's an example of a real grassroots program. And he has generated jobs for people within his community. He goes into schools and gets the kids to recycle and to grow their own food and all sorts of cool stuff. And what he does is that he creates champions within his own community. So if he leaves tomorrow or the next day, there'll be someone else that will pop up and do exactly what he was doing or even more. So Eric Sangor, the program that he was running was really, really awesome. But really all the programs there, the planting of mangroves, they've been doing this for years, and it's just amazing how much work they've already done and how passionate they are in growing the community and providing jobs for the community whilst also reforesting, so that intersects again of ensuring that whatever conservation practice you're doing is a whole. So it's creating jobs, it's ensuring that the area is reforested, it's just doing more than one job of conservation. So I think those were definitely some of my highlights.
Nina?
Well, for me, I second what Alexa said. So the most impressive one for me was really Greenland. It really faces you with the effects of climate change. I went there 3 times, and from day 1 to day 3, during that week, you could already see a change, which is shocking. And speaking also to the team that had been out there 6 months before, even they said it's you just can see the ice melting, and it's really, really scary. So that was one, because it was really eye-opening. The other one, Senegal, because we were planting these mangroves. So you basically feel like you contributed to something, but also in Senegal, actually stepping on those beaches and seeing all the plastic is shocking. And it's just shocking because it's not Senegalese plastic, it's plastic from Europe, from the US, that comes from the oceans to the shore. So that was really, really shocking and eye-opening at the same time. So yeah, it's great to go to those locations and see that, because it just shows that we all just need to work together and act.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I think that's a perfect way to round this off, and it sums up Extreme E perfectly. Thank you so much. We have run a tiny bit over, and I know there's some more questions, but guys, if your question didn't get answered, do pop it in the Girls on Track UK Facebook page, and we will hopefully be able to answer it for you. But yeah, the recording will be posted as well. So if you want to come back to this webinar as well and watch and listen, please do. It will be on the Girls on Track UK Facebook page. And a big thank you again to Girls on Track UK and Motorsport UK for making this webinar possible. And thank you to all three of you for joining me. It's been so fantastic to hear your points of view and hear how you've got into this. And yeah, just a big thank you to all three of you.
Yeah, thanks everyone as well for having us. It was great to be part of this.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to end this webinar now. It is our final one of the year as well. Thank you all for joining Girls on Track community as well. We've just hit over 5,000 members, which is an incredible number, and it's so great to have this community. So do make sure you guys engage with each other, and you're all popping in the chat now. But yeah, I hope to see you all popping up in the Facebook chat and group real soon. But yes, big thank you again. Enjoy the rest of your evenings. I hope you all have a very good holiday season, as this is going to be the last one. Look out for the January newsletter as well for all of the webinars and all of the Girls on Track events that will be coming up in 2022. But thank you all so much for joining. Thank you again, ladies. Oh, I need to stop saying thank you to everyone. But we're going to end this now. Take care, everybody. Have a good evening.
Bye everyone. Thank you.
Ciao.